Well, hello guys, welcome back. And today we're talking about Loki's episode 3, Lamentis. Did you see that new Shang-Chi trailer? It's got Abomination in it, or at least it looks like Abomination. That's interesting. Like, I want to be clear right now. The Incredible Hulk, right? The MCU Hulk movie that a lot of people forget exists is not a good movie. I don't know if I'd say it's the worst MCU movie, but it's definitely bottom 3 alongside the first Thor and the second Thor, and the second Iron Man's also pretty low down there. Third one's good though. I won't hear any shit about that. Third Iron Man is good. The Incredible Hulk is not a good movie. I don't want this to become a Phantom Menace bullshit. Because right, you see the Phantom Menace, it's terrible. You spend your entire life knowing the Phantom Menace is terrible, and then now all of a sudden these new age kids, these Zoomers are like, oh no, the Phantom Menace and the prequels are actually really good movies. No, they aren't. But yeah, no, seeing Abomination again in this new Thor or in this new Shang-Chi trailer, that's neat. What I want to say is that that's cool because it's what we want these TV shows to do. Right? These TV shows are doing all of these like, oh, we were hoping we'd get Doctor Strange and WandaVision. Oh, wouldn't it be cool to see, right? Wouldn't it be cool to see any number of characters in this show? And none of it's going to happen. But seeing Abomination in Shang-Chi, and we also know it's Abomination is also probably going to be in She-Hulk. It's just cool, right? It's just one of those like neat crossover elements that we wish the TV shows did more of. But hey, we're getting it here, so that's cool. The actual episode itself, I don't actually have that much to talk about. For these reviews, I take notes, obviously. And normally I have two, maybe, I think Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the last few episodes had like 3 pages of notes. I have a page this time. So yeah, hopefully quick adventure, in, out, 5 minutes, right? Everything will go fine. So we start off at the beginning of the episode. We get the memory of the Minutemen. They're in, I don't know, Hawaii or something, drinking martinis. And they talk about brain freeze because, of course, we're just going to, later on, it's revealed the variant calls herself Sylvie. So let's just rip that Band-Aid off now. It's Sylvie. And Sylvie is trying to get information about the timekeepers. They eventually get that the timekeepers are behind the golden doors. They're also, the whole brain freeze thing, that's completely wrong. Like, isn't brain freeze like the blood vessels in your neck that like transport blood to the brain? Isn't those get cold and then the blood in your brain gets cold? Isn't that brain freeze? I don't know. This is just me being semantics and stupid. And then we go to where the last episode left off. Sylvie goes into the TVA. Loki follows. And we see that Sylvie, right, with enchantment, can't control everyone. Like, we see her try to use it on one of the Minutemen, and it just doesn't work. So it's like later on Loki is immune to it as well. But yeah, we also see that it doesn't work on everyone. Right? I think later on they say that people with like stronger wills are more immune to it. So that's, yeah. But yeah, so because of that, we get a fight scene here in the TVA, and it ends up with Loki and Sylvie fighting that, oh, Loki's like, hey, let's work together, let's overthrow the timekeepers. Sylvie's like, nope, we ain't doing that. They fight in front of the golden doors that supposedly lead to the timekeepers. The judge comes in and they run away. Okay, that's our start for the episode. So now they're trapped here on Lamentis 1, right? The time dealy, the temp pad as they call it, is out of battery. Loki hides it because he can do magic again. And so they're stuck on Lamentis 1, which is a planet. So Lamentis 1 is a moon, and the planet like that's the moon is orbiting is blowing up, I guess, and it's gonna crash into the moon, killing everyone on the moon. Also, we're in the year 2077, which makes me ask, are these humans? Everyone so far in Loki has looked human. Like I made the comment last time about how like we need Star Trek forehead bumps. And yeah, like, is this supposed to be a human colony? Because we're only, what, 50 something years in the future, 56 years in the future? This isn't a human colony, right? This is some sort of aliens that look like humans. At least that's how I'm choosing to take it. After that, they form not a team, but a truce. I think it's also around here that Sylvie gives her name as Sylvie, that she doesn't want to be called Loki, she doesn't want to be called Variant. And yeah, so that's where we get Sylvie. We find out right their goal is to ultimately power up the Tempad again because it's out of battery and they're gonna need a lot of it. This is where we get the whole thing about the Sylvie tries to enchant Loki and it doesn't work. And Sylvie also reveals that this is a plan years in the making, which makes me at like, has she been spending years like outside of the timeline, just like hiding, running from place to place, collecting time bombs? Like, how does time work when you're outside time? How can you have a plan years in the making? I mean, I guess maybe it's you've been hiding out in the same like apocalypse for years, day in and day out. So, like, how can time work outside of time? And this is where we talk about Sylvie's plan. That her, right, Loki's like, oh, what's your plan? To create a power vacuum and then just walk away? Does Sylvie even have, like, she talks about, like, oh, I have this plan to, right, this is a plan years in the making, but, like, what is the actual plan? And by the end of the episode, I feel like we still don't know what the plan is. That Sylvie wants to do, she wants to destroy the timeline, kill the timekeepers, presumably. But again, presumably, we don't actually know what her plan is. And I know Loki and Sylvie don't trust each other, obviously. But I also feel like the episode, one of the things that does hurt this episode is that I feel like there's a lot of questions that should be answered here, because right, this is our hero and our villain theoretically in the same room together, given a lot of chance to talk, and we just don't get that much. Because this episode is fine. I don't think this, I've seen a lot of people say this episode is bad. I'm not going to go that far. I don't think this episode is bad. There are some like there's a moment on the train that it's a slower moment, but I do like it. So from there, they arrive in town, and the town, well, it reminds me of Fallout or the Outer Worlds, right? Like it reminds me of especially the Outer Worlds. Like the Outer Worlds is like this post indulged by capitalism world that's just terrible. And yeah, Lamentis 1 reminds me of like the towns in the Outer Worlds, a very similar aesthetic, obviously. Also, there's a lot of purple in, like, for some reason, like the planet's purple and there's a lot of purple. To that end, I think the art direction in this episode is very good, right? The planet's surface is purple, but the sky itself and the planet blowing up in the background is green, right? Which complement one another very well. So to that end, that's well done. As well as even though I'm comparing the aesthetic to the Outer Worlds and whatnot, that's still a good aesthetic, and I think it works well here as well. Like especially at the end when we get the neon, like dystopian, like city crumbling. It's like, no, the aesthetic works really well here. So yeah, visually, I think this episode, like taking us off Earth and trying to do something a little bit more interesting, especially for a TV show, I do really like. I think it works pretty well. Eventually, going through the town, they find one last person who's decided not to evacuate with everybody else, or at least attempt to evacuate. They try brute force, right? Sylvie tries to knock on the door, that doesn't work. Loki tries to disguise himself as her husband, and that doesn't work, right? You know, the boomer joke. Even though these people most certainly aren't boomers. I mean, 2077, they'd be maybe millennials at the best. Everything is cyclical. And then this is where we find out about the Ark, which is an evacuation vessel. From there, they head to the train station. And at the train station, we find, this is where again, the Outer Worlds comparison isn't based in nothing, because a lot of the people still stuck on the planet are those who can't afford to leave, we'll see this later on, that like the poor, when they get to the arc later on, the poor people are just rioting in the streets. Anarchy has ensued because only the rich can afford to leave, and in this case only the rich can afford to get on the train. Loki and Sylvie have to get on the train. To do this, Loki disguises himself as a guard, and Sylvie uses her enchantment to trick one of the guards, because they both had like half a plan that would work. So mixing their plans together does ultimately work. It's, yeah, you know what? It's fine. It makes sense. From there, they get on the train and we get our little heart to heart. And this is what I was talking about earlier with it being very one-sided, or at least that's what on my first viewing, I was like, okay, this is very one-sided, because we know about Loki. We know his whole deal. We've seen him throughout Thor, the Dark World, Thor Ragnarok, Infinity War, Avengers. I didn't mention that earlier. Yeah, we've seen Loki. We know his whole deal. This heart-to-heart scene on the train is just more of Loki. It's more of what we already know about Loki. In this moment, I want to know more about Sylvie. What makes her tick? Like we learn a little bit, right? We learn, right? Loki talks about how he learned magic from his mother, whereas Sylvie's enchantment was all self-taught. And so that I'm okay, we do get a little bit of it. And to be fair, this episode is not as when I first saw it, I was like, yeah, this is totally one-sided. Upon rewatch, it's not actually as one-sided as I thought it was, because not that much is given actually. Like, yeah, Loki talks about his magic, Sylvie talks about her magic. Loki talks about his parents, Sylvie talks about that like Loki's like, oh yeah, I loved my mother, and Sylvie's like, oh, I barely knew her. And at the time I was like, that's right, like I want to know more. And of course we're gonna find out more theoretically in future episodes, but at the time it's like, yeah, I kind of want to know more. But we actually don't get that much about Loki and his mother. I mean, we got more of it in the first episode, definitely. So and then we also find out, right, this is where Sylvie delivers the line, love is hate, and they talk about love, and Loki is bisexual. Cool. We talked last time about how Loki is non-binary, or however they put it. And again, I'm still kind of waiting for the show to address that. But in this moment, it's a lot more direct. That yes, Loki is bisexual. There's been guys, there's been girls in the past, and Sylvie is the same way. I have seen a lot of people in the days since this episode came out, because again, I've been pushing this off because I've been busy, say that, oh, this is like the moment at the end of Star Wars Rise of Skywalker where there's a lesbian kiss, and it's like something that can just easily be cut out. I've seen a lot of people compare this moment to that moment. I want to call bullshit. Yes, this could, like, unless by the end of the show they give Loki a boyfriend, which they aren't going to, obviously. Right? I see where people would hand wave this from. But I don't think it's as right. Loki has never had Thor has had several romantic interests throughout these movies, mainly Natalie Portman, whose character's name I don't remember. That's never been one of Loki's things. So like them just bringing it up, I mean, like, where else are you going to put it in? I don't want to write this off as easily as other people have. Because then the other thing is Sylvie transgender? That's the other question, because we don't really know how this whole variant thing works. Is Sylvie transgender? That's the question. And I don't know. I mean, if she is, then they do dead name her a lot in this show, and that's not good. But I can't tell, honestly. Like, I guess that will be something that we'll have to figure out later on once we get her full backstory. But at this moment, I kind of hope they go for it. After that, Sylvie ends up falling asleep. Loki gets drunk. We get the Asgardian song, which I do actually really like. It has this like high energy, and then it slows down for a minute, and then it picks up the high energy. Yeah, that's a nice moment. Loki gives, right, earlier Sylvie was like, love is hate, and now Loki gives the metaphor that love is an imaginary dagger. I don't think that's a bad metaphor. Like, honestly, I've definitely seen worse metaphors for love, and like the love is a dagger. I know Sylvie writes it off in the show. I don't think it's actually that bad. And then after that, we get the train fight. I like that Sylvie use because they get found out, and I like that Sylvie uses the horns as like a weapon. Like she takes off her horns and stabs someone with them. Which doesn't that happen in one of the Thor movies? Like because Loki's got the big stupid horned helmet. And isn't in one of the movies he takes it off and like disarms somebody by like swinging it, or I don't know, he uses it at because the horns are stupid, but like he does use it as a. I want to say he does that in Ragnarok, but he does use the horns as a weapon in one point. They both get thrown off the train. Loki pulls out the temp pad, and it's been destroyed. So now they're stuck on Lamentis 1. They're screwed, right? They're all gonna die because nobody makes it off the planet. Sylvie like screams at one point, and it's really hard to do a satisfying scream. Like that's one of the hard things for actors to do, and I thought this one was fine. I don't know. There was just something about it, especially with like the magic and all that, because it wasn't like too overblown, but it still had like a weight to it. Loki comes up with the plan like, hey, the Ark, what about all the people on the Ark? Well, the Ark gets destroyed. So what if we make sure the Ark gets off the planet? That'll get us off the planet. Okay, makes perfect sense. And on top of that, but right, I said last time that hiding out in apocalypses is a great idea as long as nobody lives. Because if everyone's supposed to die, then nothing matters. But if somebody lives through an apocalypse that they aren't supposed to, well, hey, that creates a new split in the timeline. So the idea of them making sure the Ark gets off the planet changes the timeline, and that will attract the TVA, which again, because we have no idea what's going on with the TVA while they're doing all of this, and that's presumably where we'll start next episode, is that the TVA, like kind of like how the 4th episode of WandaVision started us off with Darcy and all the Sword is doing. I'm assuming the next episode will start us off with the TVA and like what they're doing. But I think in this moment, trying to get the Ark off the planet so that way they can escape makes a lot of sense. I think that's not a bad plan in this situation. As they're walking to whatever city has the Ark in it, I don't think we get any names besides Lamentis 1. So in this moment, they explain how enchantment works, and that it's like grabbing hold of the mind. She talks about making fantasies out of memories for like those who are hard, because like some people she can do it instantly. Other people it's a little harder to do it with, so she has to like enthrall them, and it's kind of like it's like taking one hand on a wheel, but of course the person still has a little control. Which, okay, so last time we talked, I mentioned that, hey, they mention enchantment. And my thought was that Sylvie is the enchantress. That was my first thought. Even though, again, we talked about how there is precedent for a Lady Loki in the comics, or at least that's what I've been told. But since last time, it was brought to my attention that I guess in Thor Love and Thunder, there have been, like, much like how Christian Bale has been cast as Gore the God Butcher, or Russell Crowe has been cast as Zeus, I guess there has been casting for an enchantress in Thor Love and Thunder. I don't know what actress was cast, but it seems like it was a different actress. So Sylvie might not be the enchantress. I mean, I don't know. The fact that they keep saying it makes me think there's got to be something there. But if there isn't, there isn't. It's no big deal. If Sylvie's just Sylvie, then that's cool as well. Also, in this moment, we find out the Minutemen are variants, right? Because, it was explained in the first episode that the Minutemen were created by the Timekeepers to make sure the flow of time flows correctly. And in this moment, it's like, no, the Minutemen weren't created like that. The Minutemen are variants, right? Like Loki would probably, if they succeeded on the mission, Loki would probably ultimately be recruited to be a Minuteman. So after that, they finally arrive at, let's just call it Ark City, which is, right, it's the city where the Ark is being held, where everyone's leaving. There's anarchy in the streets, because, right, only the rich and the elite can leave. Everyone else is just being left on the planet to die. So, like, the second we enter the Ark City, we start this tracking shot, right, following Loki and Sylvie as they move through the city. And this is a long tracking shot. It's over 3 minutes long of them just going through the city. There's a fight scene in the middle of it. There's explosions. a lot happens. It's a long tracking shot, relatively speaking. And yeah, this is them just showing off that they can do this, right? Like I already talked about the sets, that they look good. We get a lot of like neon light, and also I guess it gels with Guardians of the Galaxy, that are especially the second one. Like I'm thinking of the bar with Sylvester Stallone in the second Guardians. Yeah, it matches up with that. That works. So yeah, we get this long shot, and yeah, it's a really well done shot. The explosions, the fight scene. Loki uses magic to hold up a building at one point. Yeah, no, it all works really well. I like this final like sequences. Yeah, it's nice. And it ends with the arc being right. The planet explodes overhead, and a piece of the planet just crashes into the arc, destroying it. And that's where the episode ends with, right, Sylvie walks away, Loki's looking at the destroyed arc, and that's where the episode ends. I'm not going to say it's amazing or anything, and Loki has definitely been a slower show. Like it's both slower, and I don't think there's like as much like WandaVision hooks you in. Falcon and Winter Soldier hooked me in. This show, well, I'm interested to see what happens week from week. It's definitely not as strong as the other two. I don't feel as invested as I do in the other two shows. I don't know. There's only 3 episodes left, and there is a lot of time to do more. Like, of course, at some point next week, I expect to learn Sylvie's backstory, why she wants to destroy the timeline and kill the timekeepers or whatever. Of course, I fucking saw somebody comment like, oh, of course this show is doing this, that, oh, the timekeepers are gonna ultimately be the bad guys, and this non-straight white woman is going to be our hero who was ultimately wronged, and she was right about the timekeepers being evil. And then it went off into some sexist, homophobic rant. And I think that might be what happens, that the timekeepers are not great, and that maybe the multiverse should exist or whatever. And I don't know, but of course, these people come rolling out of the woodworks, because fuck, man. But I think the show is fine. I think the show is fine so far. I think this is a fine episode. It's got its moments that I think are nice, but it's very slow. Not a lot goes on, a lot of it. I mean, the fact that I only had a page of notes kind of proves it. Whereas like the previous 2 episodes, I both had 2 pages for. Of course, it's funny that out of all like the interesting MCU shows, this is the one that's going to have the most impact. Yeah, we've got 3 episodes left. So for now, I hope you all enjoyed. Stay tuned for more. Till next time. Peace.